I believe so, yep.
As you know, the state of Iowa had the opportunity to give out about $195 million to residents of Iowa outside of Polk County. As of a few weeks ago, they had made it through about $5 million. So that tells us a few things, none of which are that not very many people need this help, but rather that the state has been pretty slow to operationalize the support that they have for people. The good news is that the process is improving. We have probably hundreds, if not 1,000 or more households in Johnson County now that have received this support, but we continue to see a great need among renters for this support. And so we ask for your continued assistance in getting the word out to anyone in Johnson County that not only is there more help available now than there has ever been for people who have lost income and are unable to pay their basic housing bills, but also that there are places where they can go to get that support. And they can make appointments at Johnson County Social Services for help filling out all of those applications as well as accessing general assistance. There's expanded support for this program and other bill payment at community. And of course, Shelter House is working on helping people put all these pieces together as well. In addition, I'm at the Center for Worker Justice every Wednesday from 3 to 6 p.m. helping people to complete these applications, and I will be doing that through the end of October. So even if someone has not accessed this assistance yet, it's definitely not too late. Now that the moratorium is lifted, it's especially important that we continue our communication with landlords and renters about this program because people can be removed from their home for non-payment of rent now. And so we just have to work as hard as possible to pull those resources together and make sure everyone needs them. The other thing I want to let you know about is that the Johnson County Affordable Housing Coalition and its board of directors made a suggestion to all of the city governments and the county government about how to spend their American Rescue Plan dollars. And I just wanted to let you know that our board identified the top priority to be the preservation of affordable housing and acquisition and rehabilitation and construction of more affordable housing. When we see units come up for sale in the private market, we don't currently have a great way to acquire those units and keep them affordable or make them more affordable. If the city and the county and the other cities put about 45% of their American Rescue Plan allocation into a single fund, we can mobilize that fund for no or low interest loans or even grants for some projects where we could acquire a large number of units at a single time, preserve the affordability of that housing, rehabilitate it if needed, and keep that housing permanently affordable in our community. It also allows us to kind of get back some of those units that are vulnerable to the private market and put them under the management and support of a local nonprofit, a resident-owned cooperative, or some other organization whose mission is to preserve affordable housing. We can't do that without a large pot of money that can allow us to respond to the private market. So I just wanted to share that information with you because I know you think about how these pieces fit together. Our other recommendation is that money be given directly to households who haven't benefited from other stimulus programs, because we see a large number of people coming to us who did not have stimulus checks or rent assistance, and those folks are getting in debt, they're borrowing money from family and friends. Direct payments to those households is really the only way that we can get them out of that and back on their feet financially. So that's my update to you all from the Affordable Housing Coalition. As always, you're welcome to contact me anytime by email, sarah@jcaffordablehousing.org, or call me at 319-541-4763. Well, that'll be up in the minutes because it did well when you have it. Otherwise, you can email me and we'll get in touch. Okay? All right, thanks. Nice to see you.
Do we have any other public comments? All right, so we'll move on to item 4. This is our Q&A session for the CDBG and home applications, which we have a chair set up for some of our applicants and representatives. So if I've got my list handy, I believe our first agency is represented, so our first one should be the City of Iowa City Down Payment Assistance, which I believe will be represented here by Eric.
Yep.
So I think the way we'll do this is we'll just take these applications in order. We'll start with the Iowa City down payment assistance application, and we'll currently take any questions that you have for Erica.
Well, I'm brand new to this process and not feeling a little sloppy in the area of the home funds, but so this is a down payment assistance program, and there's another one with Green State that the Iowa City would be partnering with. So that's two, am I correct? And initially, we could fund two down payment assistance programs. Okay, is the difference between the two, or if you want to highlight this one a little bit,
Sure.
would be helpful for me.
Sure. So this is a third phase of a program that the city already offers in the South District neighborhood. And so we have been acquiring duplex properties and converting them to condos and selling them for home ownership. We also rehab the units so they're ready to purchase, ready to move in. And so this funding would allow us to continue that program and would provide home down payment assistance for those buyers. We try to cater to residents that live within the South District, so people who are already living on Taylor Drive and Davis Street, kind of in the South District area, and give them opportunity for home ownership. The Green State program is similarly down payment assistance with home funds. However, it's not directly to city-owned units or directly to the South District, but it is limited to low-income census tracts. And so we're partnering with the credit union to provide down payment for people who are purchasing homes in those areas who would also qualify for the home income guidelines. And so you won't be able to use both programs, but there's two separate programs for different areas.
Take any other questions for Eric? I mean, I have a question that's actually pertaining to the next one, the Iowa City Green State. Let's all hold off on that. Does anyone have a question for the first patient?
I do. So, I'm just looking on the questions that came from the staff. So, do you have applicants ready?
So we have about, as of today, we have 13 people kind of on our applicant list. I wouldn't say they're ready because they have not finished all the steps to apply for the program, and they don't all have pre-approval for lending, but we're working through those steps, and we have a couple people that are just about ready to purchase the existing homes that we have.
And so what do you do to screen the applicants?
Sure. So they have to income qualify for the home funds, be under 80% of the area median income, so we do an income verification. They have to take a home ownership education course through Horizons. So it costs $99, but we reimburse that amount, so it's no cost to them. And then they have to get pre-approval for a loan for the cost that's not covered by our down payment assistance.
And then do you do a credit score at the very beginning?
We don't run the credit score, but the lender, of course, would do that. And so we try to work with people to kind of help them get set up working with the lender.
So is this just for first-time home buyer or everybody?
Anybody, but we have preference categories, so it's more of a geographic preference for people who live in the neighborhood that we're working in. And then we also have preference for people who are on the Housing Authority's Family Self-Sufficiency Program. So if they're interested in purchasing a home and they're working on that program, they might get a priority.
I have a question. Why you are giving the priority for the people who live on the housing authority?
From the Housing Authority?
Yes, why wouldn't open the application for everyone to see? You said the priority should be given to certain people, from the people who live in the housing authority.
The family self-sufficiency people?
Yes.
So those people have been working with the Mary Booth, our family self-sufficiency coordinator with the city, and kind of setting goals for home ownership. So I guess we just expanded it to that group of people.
Yeah, in my thought that should be given to people in need. The most one in need that should be given the priority.
So right now, our initial goal with the program was to, this neighborhood has a higher proportion of renters versus owner-occupied units. And so we're trying to give those renters opportunities to purchase within their own neighborhood. If we come to a point, we have quite a few properties that we plan to continue the program, and if we get to a point where there's no eligible applicants in the immediate neighborhood, we would expand out.
Do you anticipate any of the recovery money coming in for something like this?
Using city,
No.
like ARPA money or what?
No, use federal COVID recovery, what Sarah was talking about.
Using for this program?
Yes.
I don't think so. With the pace that we're moving, I think our regular home funds would serve the purpose of our program. And we've used, we actually have properties purchased to continue the program, and we use local fee and lieu funds for that.
You said there's currently about 13 applicants that you identified.
Yeah.
Is there enough housing to help in that south side area that's 13 people if they were qualified for?
If we move,
housing they
so
can find and buy?
So right now we own 3 properties that are under rehab, and then we purchased 16 more. So there are enough units, they're just not ready for home ownership yet. And it's gonna be kind of a longer term program over several years.
I'm sorry, you may have already said this, but you see 3 units have been sold. You have 2 units you anticipate for sale by June 22, and then the remaining 2 units. So that's the whole project is, it's like 7 units, or is it 5?
So we have 6 right now, but I think we're saying that we're gonna do 4 more on top of that.
Okay. And the timeline for that, is this the city steps plan? Is the timeline, if it weren't funded this year, would still be eligible next year? Is that within the timeline of the project?
I think so. It just depends how, so right now the properties that we own, some of them are rented out. And so our ability to move forward will depend on people vacating those units, because we're not gonna have anyone move out if they don't want to. So once we get a duplex that is vacant on both sides, we'll start with the rehab.
Okay.
So it's a little up in the air at this time. But yeah, if we get any free money, we would apply again in the future.
Okay.
Help me understand correctly. So this housing market is limited geographically to the south side district only, so people can't find a house outside of this district. Is that right?
For this program, we're only offering it within, we were specifically looking for the duplex homes on Taylor and Davis Street. For the next application that we have, it's throughout the city, but it's limited to low-income census tracts.
However, people from other areas can participate in the program by purchasing a home in the South District, I mean, if they're eligible, correct?
Yeah, if we don't have anyone, we have the preference category, so people who live there would have the highest preference, but if we don't find buyers within the preference categories, we would open it up to a broader area.
Well, I'll take the last call here for questions on this application before we move on to the next. I believe will also be represented by Eric.
Yep.
All right, well, our second application is the City of Iowa City and Green State. And Erica, will you be speaking with us, or will there also be someone from Green State?
I don't believe we have anyone from Green State tonight. I don't think they could make it, but I'll try to answer questions and pass them along if I can't answer on their behalf.
Okay. So what questions do we have for Erica on the city by the city of Green State? I mean, I have one. So the main goal is to close the racial homeownership gap, and the method is by targeting certain neighborhoods and income groups. Of course, I mean there's an inference involved here, and I'm assuming that there are legal regulatory reasons why that inference is needed.
Right.
I mean, the simplest way to target racial ownership gap is to target by race, which I'm assuming you can.
Yeah, we can do that.
There's also nothing there in measurement, by way of measurement. Are you able to measure the race of buyers or applicants here?
Do you mean in terms of tracking who we're getting applications from, or what?
Well, I mean, who you get applications from, and also who the assistance goes to. I mean, it's hard to know whether it succeeds, I guess, without nothing there.
Yeah, I think we'd be tracking demographics of who we're serving. We were required to do that for our federal funds.
Okay.
So yeah, through that we could see if it was meeting the goals that we set out to make.
What are the, can you provide a couple of examples on the flexibility that will be allowed for the requirements in the lending?
Sure. So they would maybe consider a lower credit score than they might have previously considered, or consideration for certain credit issues that someone might have in the report that would give them a lower score, a lower required down payment, which of course we're going to help with the home assistance. And then the other thing is the job length and tenure. So if someone might have consistently be employed, but maybe they hop around jobs, that might negatively impact their application, and they're going to take, like how they phrase it is they're taking a longer look at some of these things to see how they can help. And they're also, if people, so they have their like regular lending, and this is called expanded guidelines or something. They have another phrase for it. But if people are still not eligible, they're also partnering with Horizons to offer homeownership or financial education courses and paying for that.
Any other questions for Erica?
How do you move with less funding? We don't have enough funds for this, fully fund for this project.
I think we would just serve, I think we're applied for 10, to do 10 households for home down payment assistance. If we got less funding, we'd do fewer as much as we can with that amount of money. And then maybe apply in the future if it goes well first round.
How is this different than the city university program? How is this program going to be different from this?
The university program is really similar to the self-district program, the first application, where the city purchased properties and rehabbed them and resold them. We didn't necessarily have down payment assistance for that program. The rehab costs were forgiven, so that's how it made it more affordable for buyers. This program we're not doing any rehab, it's just assistance getting financing and then down payment assistance to make it more affordable for the buyers.
Have a good ones right there in the application. I have shelter house next. I believe we have shelter house.
question that I have would be the whole issue about the funds underway. It sounds like shelter house staff contacted the consultant with HUD to see if this would be allowable, and it is under this program, because normally the CDBG doesn't grant funds to projects underway, so there's no hiccups, no stumbling blocks that we would have with that particular issue.
Looks like they said we could make it work.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, and normally if a project is underway, we're unable to fund it, but it sounds like just how this one's set up that we could probably make it work.
And Chrissy, that's your understanding too, right?
Yes, from the Iowa Finance Committee.
So I have a general question, because I'm new. But it looks to me like you're asking for all of the funds, correct? All of the funds that are available? Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a requirement for a Choto set aside?
We do have $78,000 of Choto set aside separate from the $500,000 available for this.
Separate?
Mhm.
So we really have 577,000?
But the 78,000 can only be used for Choto eligible projects.
Okay, that answers my question. So if you don't receive funds from this commission, or a recommendation from this commission, where does that put the program as far as the interest on your construction?
Yep, so the construction loan will convert to a long-term mortgage.
Right, permanent, yeah.
Yep, and what we're trying to do is reduce that debt burden on the front side of the project so that we're not taking out the mortgage, because that does weigh heavily on our ability to meet the operating expenses for the project. So unique to permanent supportive housing is that it's not just the operating expenses of maintaining the housing, but it's the 24/7 staffing for the facility and the case management and supportive services that are provided for the 36 tenants. I think I included just an example, gross math, that $500,000 will reduce the burden on the project over the life of a typical mortgage, funding essentially a 25 FTE coverage for the facility. So otherwise, we're patching together a myriad of different funding sources and fundraising activities to support that operating budget. And we are continuing to move forward with fundraising efforts, but this is just an attempt to overall reduce that initial debt burden on the front side of the project.
And with the National Housing Trust Fund funds, is there a deadline on when that can be expended, or have you already expended that?
We're just now expending it. The deadline, I believe, is at the end of next year, but construction will be completed by June. The project will be occupied by June.
So there's no concern about them recapturing that 2.7 million?
No, we're on schedule with everything. In spite of supply chain issues.
The costs have increased since you started.
Significantly, yep. I think we had over $750,000 of cost increases just because of supply.
This is less a question than a compliment. I mean, I think what stands out about this application is the long-term potential to provide long-term solutions to housing issues. I mean, anything in the application that, any evidence, any examples, anything that might speak to that, I feel like it's strength in the application. So that's just, that's what stands out to me about it and what the focus on.
It did trade speak to that, but we did some content on proceedings of the long-term benefits. And frankly, the fact that we're housing individuals that have been chronically homeless, living on the streets of our community for years, if not decades. And I use Cross Park as just the initial example. See that people, we opened in January of 2019, and the only people that have left have been through death, and then we had 2 people that we've been able to get into higher levels of care, assisted living, because in Ireland you cannot move from the street or a home situation to assisted living. So we've been successful in that, and only have 1 eviction all this time. So people are maintaining their housing.
Do you have vacancies at Prospect now?
No.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Are there any vacancies at
Oh.
Prospect?
I just had trouble hearing everything that went on, so.
No vacancies.
What is the anticipated length of time to go to whatever full occupancy or nearly full occupancy once it's open?
Yep. So our goal is to have occupancy at the beginning of June, and by mid-July, frankly, be fully occupied. We'll use the winter shelter period through the course of that season to be really meeting with folks, encouraging them, getting any initial documents that we require to be able to have people in place for those project-based vouchers, which are identification, social security number, birth certificate things. So getting all of that work done in advance. We learned that if we start too early, people, it does not work well for folks. So towards the mid to late winter season, working with folks to get them in line on the coordinated entry prioritization list, get all the documents ready and in place, and have movement to go pretty quickly. This will be a crush for the case managers, but we really need to get it within 30 minutes.
How much is this project is going to help us to cut the homelessness on the streets? Or do you have any statistic about the homelessness in the town or in the area?
Yes, so this is targeted at just individuals who has definition of chronically homeless, so individuals that has to do with the length of homelessness and the number of episodes within a certain period of time, and the fact that they have a disabling condition. I'd say 100% of the people that we're housing have multiple disabling conditions, so serious mental illness, co-occurring substance abuse histories, and brain injury, intellectual disabilities, chronic health issues. As far as reducing homelessness, the real goal here is reducing chronic homelessness, and I think that we'll be very close to ending chronic homelessness with this project. When we as a homeless service provider talk about ending homelessness, we say that we're at functional zero. Functional zero means that we're getting to a position where anyone who presents themselves as homeless and wants housing, wants to be housed, we can house them within 30 days. We've retooled and realigned our resources as a community so that we can meet with that person and get them housed, if they so choose housing, within that 30-day limit. With this project online, we believe that we're right there at that milestone for chronically homeless. The challenge for community members is that they believe that when they see people on the streets, they believe that when they see people panhandling and the signs that say that I'm homeless, that 100% of those people are actually homeless. They are not. Oftentimes they're living doubled up, oftentimes they're living as a single household in their own unit. So you cannot trust things that you just, and people that you just see with any kind of sign. And I think that that creates some cognitive dissonance for a lot of people in our community. But from our data, from our understanding, our research, and our work, our lived experience, we do believe that this gets us very close to meeting and ending chronic homelessness now. So, does that make sense?
Yes. Another question, if the tenants on these units cannot afford to pay their rent, do you evict them from the?
No. This is, we do everything radically possible, and doing radically possible to help people maintain their housing. So the key to this type of housing working is that we work closely with the City Housing Authority that is dedicated to what's called project-based vouchers for the project. So every unit has a voucher that is attached to the unit. And the Housing Authority has reduced the typical requirements in and around criminal histories, credit, and different things that often are barriers for the folks that we're working with. They've eliminated those so that only the federal limitations stand, which are cannot be on a national secretary registry and cannot have manufactured meth in a publicly assisted housing unit. So those are the only limitations. They work really closely with us to get people the housing voucher. When they move in, they have that project-based voucher, which guarantees a source of revenue for that individual. And they pay, the tenant pays no more than 30% of their income. Now, when they come into the unit, many tenants have $0 in income, so they're paying 30% of $0. And it's our work as the provider, case managers, to work with folks to rapidly get people connected to the benefits, whether they're VA benefits, Social Security disability benefits that they might qualify for. So they do have a revenue source coming in, and over time, help people to re-engage in the world of work, if that's something that they're able to do. Frankly, the vast majority of these folks are so sick and incredibly disabled, their conditions are incredibly disabling, that work is really not a reality for many people. But for those people who do, and are able to and want to, we have supported employment through our janitorial business, and we also are working with businesses in the community. We've got several people at Cross Park that are working gainfully, not full-time, but so, but again, that rent is limited to 30% of their income. And I think there was another part of the question. Sorry.
What is the lifespan on the project-based voucher? Is that something that have to go through any recertification?
Oh, no, the lease is annually renewed. The project-based voucher is theirs. We have to do income recertifications on a regular basis, but it's theirs for the life of the project and their tenancy, as long as they don't break those federal requirements, somehow become on a federal registry, sex offender registry, and eligible. But otherwise, the Housing Authority has gone one step further and created what's called in the homeless service world a move-on strategy, meaning that when people are tenants, if they stay with us for at least 1 year and in our good standing, and from that point forward, are interested in moving on from this permanent supportive housing project and living out in the community on their own and more independently. That project-based voucher converts to tenant-based rental assistance functionally. It is their voucher to take with them, and we help and relocate people interested. So far, we haven't had anybody that's done that. But that voucher goes with them, that financial support goes with them, and then we get another project-based voucher for the project. So it's theirs ongoing.
Any other questions on this application? I think our next application is from the Health Fellowship. Good evening. And what questions do we have for this application? Pretty straightforward. Larry, we asked all the questions for the previous one.
Well, this is not my wheelhouse, and this applies, pertains to what Mary Ann said. So the total amount of money in this grant process is $577, and this project would be the Choto that gets this at least 77. Is that right?
If you choose to fund it, yeah.
Okay, but it could get more. I mean, so it doesn't have to. I guess I'm a little confused about
I think,
that.
I'm a little confused.
Oh, well, that makes me feel a lot better. You're confused about it.
You're asking for $160,000 for this particular house,
Correct.
property. Then, that does not include the $78,000 Or it does?
It does, yeah.
It does, okay. So it's really not separate. We really have then, with this application, we have to consider $578,000 to allocate.
Yes, but the Housing Fellowship is the only agency that's eligible for that 78,000,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to know.
You maintain the Choto status?
Yes. And oftentimes with an application like this, we would be asking for rehabilitation funds on one of our existing properties. Chrissy noted the additional expense in materials right now and finding contractors, and we're finding with a lot of the rehabilitation work that we've been doing this year that that's enough of a challenge that probably waiting next year for a big rehab project is a better thing. We'll get more bang for our buck that way. And this is envisioned as purchasing a home that requires little to no rehabilitation. And we've viewed several in the past couple of months that would fit the bill. That's how we came up with the estimated total.
So you already have the target home in mind?
Yeah, depending on, how long.
I did read all the applications, but I can't flip from screen to screen really quickly, so it's based on my memory, that's not real great, but, so you do have a home that, is in consideration?
Yes.
Okay.
And that home is within the affordable housing map? according to the state?
Correct. Yep, there are two that would both easily fit this, but there are a couple others that I haven't been inside that I can do.
Oh, and this is the one that has the you're targeting a six-person household?
Yes, most of the households, most of the applicants that we're turning away right now for lack of inventory are larger families
Okay.
that need 3 to 4 bedrooms, and we just don't have the vacancies in our inventory that would fit their household size. So
Okay.
that's who we're really looking to target. We do have some vacancies at the 1 and 2 bedroom
Okay.
that we're able to fill immediately, but this is where we're seeing the And really, that's what we view as one of our kind of key contributions to the neighborhood and community beyond just helping our tenants find housing that's affordable. Is that most of our 3-bedroom homes, those families have been in there for years or more than a decade in a lot of cases, and that contributes to the stability of the neighborhood. Those kids are going to school and making friends, and they're investing in the neighborhood and home. So that's why we're fighting.
Well, I think, just the other thing is that, when individual families move into those homes, they're updated, they're done, and, they don't have to face, those kinds of issues, I think. Nice job in your first admin one, by the way, I've been watching that.
Yeah,
As I grow
that
up.
one has been a mess. That was a big project, but it feels good to be getting. We already have, we're getting calls on it, people seem to.
I bet you are, it's looking nice, yeah.
Only 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
And I suppose I could make one other comment, if I can take a little bit more of your time, is that, 15 years of affordability is what we're targeting for this specific home. That'd be the duration of the loan, but investment in, we use the equity in our organization to continue to provide affordability in perpetuity with those dollars. So while this house someday may fall off the compliance associated with these funds, those houses are typically the cheapest ones that we have, are the ones that no longer have debt. We only need to collect rent enough to, do maintenance and pay staff, but the long-term affordability is with the organization, I would say, and not just in particular. Good, thank you all.
And our final application, Brandon, did I forget? I mean, I know that there's an application for unlimited abilities, but is that the final application? That's the feeling that I forgot. Final application, that is for unlimited abilities.
40 people?
No,
But is that how many people the unlimited abilities are serving now?
now, correct.
Okay, so this would add to that 40. And do you have any vacancies in any of your other properties?
Right now, currently, now we have a lot of referral waiting for placement.
You largely serve individuals with mental illness?
Yes.
Is there any coordination between unlimited abilities and successful living?
No, usually the only coordination is like when they discharge the client, and then we can take the intake and try to see if we can take the client to our program, which we got a few people coming from successful different businesses.
You said that it is fully leased right now because I thought I saw that it was not fully leased.
Which one?
You had a project funded fiscal year 21. Is that fully
Yep.
leased at this point?
Yep. Correct.
As of when, because what I'm reading on the report is that it's not been fully leased to date.
We haven't received the completion report, I guess I should say.
It's fully leased.
Okay. So you get that updated?
It needs to be submitted, and then the period of affordability begins, so it hasn't technically started yet.
Okay.
So if this project funded, I can see on the timetable, you finalize the purchase by February 1st, and then you have the expected full occupancy of home on April 1st. So when you open the application for the public to apply and you process the applications, you have all the 2 months.
Yes, actually, like I said, we have a lot of people on the table waiting for placement, and we're trying to, plan ahead, because we don't want this between the time we get the intake and the time when we enroll them. Sometimes it will take like a few weeks, and sometimes it will take months, and that's why we're trying to get all this stuff ahead and help people. Because actually, currently, like I'm talking right now, we have a couple of clients who live on the community and they will discharge today. For example, they have 2 people because of the mental illness, they have a problem with their landlord. So now they're trying to discharge them. All those people we're trying to take them into consideration into our business.
Do you have any other questions?
I don't.
Great, thank you. I suppose I have one question for staff. I did see that one application was ruled ineligible. I might have missed it, I'm sorry if I did, but was there a reasoning given as to why the application was ineligible?
It wasn't home eligible the way it was submitted, so we've funded that activity before with CDBG CV, which was a little bit more flexible funding, but it didn't fit with these funds.
Okay. I do have a question for the admin. It says on here, you have $50,000 available in pending status. What would happen if the loan is not approved? Do you have a plan B for that, or do they know?
Yeah, we have I just received the stuff from the bank.
Oh.
We have a credit line, $50,000 rate.
Oh, so you're just spending something else? So it's pretty much going to be approved, but it's just
Yeah, no, it's a credit line, it's already approved.
contingency on something else, or maybe? Okay. I just want to make sure that you have a plan B just in case
Yeah, I can give
it
you
goes through. No, that's fine, thank you.
All right, let's take a look at item 5, unsuccessful and delayed projects. So there are 2 projects we're going to be discussing here. One is the remediations project, and the other is the successful living project. think we'll do this in order, road creation first and then successful living. But for those of you who were on your first year, there was some history that Brianna included in the packet that hopefully gave you a good sense of that. I know that these were originally funded well before you joined the commission, so hopefully all of that was helpful and you were able to follow along. So I'll draw your attention to that from the packet, and then I believe we also have we have a staff recommendation in the packet as well, and first thing we'll do is hear from, we have Patrick Smith from Road Creation, so we'll hear from Patrick Smith.
Should I give you an update? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right, so as of right now, I received the notification from the city stating that I had to have the project submitted. I did resubmit the project to bidders. I did get a return bid for the project, and three of the other bidders weren't able to do the project. The other project, Kennedy Construction, that came through with the bid that was within budget. So I did turn in the annual reports that were delinquent, and so as of right now, as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing stopping me. The biggest hurdle is that there was enough time from the time that you guys submitted that letter to me to the time it was time for me to actually give the contractors enough time to react. So in there, what's not written on the paper, but what was conversed is that they really would appreciate it more time to talk. But I want to take to reflect back on some of the other things. I don't know if the commission knows that I already had an agreement with the city already ready to be signed, but the bid that came through was at $119,000. I was only allocated $78,000 that was my allocated amount of money. So it's not that, and because I'm not sure if that was brought to the table, because I wasn't at the last meeting. So I'm saying this because there has been progress on this project. This project has not been dormant. But for every and one of the drawbacks was getting the hood installed in the kitchen. The hood, the original design for the hood was for the hood to come out the side of the building and then go up to the roof. And the city changed this when we first looked at the job back in a year ago, or whatever it was. That was discussed and it was okay, but the guidelines had changed. So we had to do a total re-engineering, and now the exhaust had to go through 3 floors. And so, in order for it to go through the 3 floors, it had to be rebudgeted. Once it was rebudgeted, we were way over budget. So we went back to the drawing board back in, I think it was in June. We looked at everything. We met with the city inspector, and they gave us guidelines that we could go on. So instead of using a commercial hood, we were able to downgrade to a top of the line residential hood that was agreeable to the city, that we could go out the side of the building. Because you can't go 10 feet out past, can't go 10 feet, within 10 feet of the sidewalk where people are walking, with the residential hood, with the commercial hood, but with the residential hood you can't. And so we went back, we got the new bid in for $78,000. The city asked that I rebid the job. I rebid the job again. Didn't get feedback from anybody but Kennedy Construction, and so that's kind of that's where we are right now. Can you guys correct me if I've said anything wrong?
I mean, I think that's in addition to the items in the memo. I think the memo pretty much summarizes our perspective on it.
So the issue that we had, so he did rebid it. The issue that we had is that the bid was only open for 4 business days, and so we felt that it wasn't an open and fair bidding process, and it didn't meet our procurement guidelines. And he did, of course, get 4 bids, but even in the bid responses, they were saying, we'd like to bid this, but we don't have enough time. So the bid that he has, we wouldn't accept. So it'd have to be bid again for an appropriate amount of time.
That was the question that I have. So the bid he's got from Kennedy is part of the short timetable, and so he's got to go out and bid again. So, it might be one step forward, but it's, it feels like it's 2 steps back, with everything that I'm reading. So
I'd like to ask a quick process question. Is this a comment in which commissioners shall not engage in discussion, or is this a Q&A session?
Well, for staff or I think it's open for discussion.
For staff, okay.
I didn't think this is public
All right.
comment, I guess. I didn't think it was. So.
All right, well then, go ahead.
Okay. I was going anyway, so. I think one of the concerns that I have, and I like the project, but I think one of the concerns that I have is that the project has, from all that I read and I knew to the commission, is delay after delay after delay, lots of problems. Very sympathetic to that. And at this point, my question is, what's the timetable that we have, that if we need to recapture the funds? I don't want to lose the funds.
This is my question as well. I mean, what's the disaster day?
So from our perspective, there's not like a one project, you call it disaster day. There's not a specific deadline for each project, but collectively we have to spend so much CDBG money every year or we'll be out of compliance for HUD. So when we have projects that are, that's why we try to format our CDBG projects to be 1-year projects. So when we have, projects that are larger or multiple projects go past 1 year, that gets us kind of closer and closer to hitting that out of compliance mark. And so that's kind of why we have the unsuccessful and delayed projects policy. So we have checkpoints to make sure things are moving forward.
The other thing I would throw in is it's a lot more complicated if the project does move forward and partial funds are expended, and if something else happened, then it's a lot harder to get those funds back.
And the amount of money that they were awarded was 78?
Correct.
And what is the bid that you had from Kennedy?
$78,160, and I'd be glad to pull my wallet out right now for $160.
Well, isn't there a matching on these anyway, or is there not a matching on CDBG?
It's not similar to home. I'd have to check the project agreement to see how much match was put up, but it was, I think the total project was around $86,000 in the agreement.
So at this point, they have to rebid the package, and what is a normal timeline that you look at for putting these projects out for bid?
I would say like 2 weeks.
2 weeks. And I think I read someplace that was the approval process not quite right, that they hadn't submitted some sort of documents to you for approval?
Staff typically review the packet before it would go out for bid.
Okay. So that's clear now, I'm assuming. So we'd be looking at, and then what did Kennedy say in terms of being able to start the project?
Kennedy's ready to go, but I can't. But I have to rebid it, number one, and we have to order. We have to order the equipment. And so soon as I get this done, I can order the equipment and be underway. Unless I have to rebid the whole project over again. Now, if I have to rebid the whole project over again, it's going to take some time, and I think it's going to take longer than 2 weeks because it's 2 weeks to give them time to react. But with the letter that you all sent me, you asked me to have the project underway. That means I have to have documentation done. You guys have to have the agreement drawn up. The agreement has to go to Jeff to be signed, and so that takes time. So I mean, I didn't have that time when you guys sent that letter. So I did what I was supposed to. I did all I could do within the time limits that you gave me.
When you say for Jeff to sign, do you mean the original project agreement?
Well, yeah, the agreement, once we finish the bid, once we finish this, there has to be an agreement between us, between the city and my organization, correct?
We have that agreement already.
Oh, so we don't have to change it?
No, we entered the project agreement before the last HCDC meeting.
Okay.
That was when we secured the mortgage as
Okay, so we
well.
don't do that again?
No, you would need a construction contract, but Jeff wouldn't need to sign anything.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so that's done. Okay, so the only thing that I would have to do is rebid the project, right?
I mean, technically, yeah, and get the construction contract and do the pre-conference meeting. And I don't know that depending on how much we want to ask for, I think we got 3/4 of the CDBG quarterly reports when the project has been, I think, over a year now. So I think we are missing a couple quarters.
I didn't know. I sent what I was asked. I didn't hear, nobody said anything more to me about it.
Isn't that typically in the agreement?
Yeah, we expect quarterly reports from CDBG grantees, and we had not received any quarterly reports to date from the last HCDC meeting. So we asked for those reports to be submitted, and we did receive partial reports.
So,
I think that it's helpful to have an update, and I apologize because I am new to the commission.
Yeah, that's okay. I also have a copy of everything for the project right here too. And
Right, but
if I can make copies, I can send it.
No, I don't need to see that. But my point is that if the agreement was signed with the city and everything that's required in the agreement, including the quarterly reports, it may have gone a little bit better if they had been submitted as required by the agreement when they were due, instead of, putting them all together and handing them in after you get this started.
Yeah, and I said that at the beginning of my conversation. Yeah, I admit I did not do all the quarterly reports time. Yeah. So I take that. I take that. I'm not denying that or arguing that.
So, Matt, the motion last month was that the project was to have been underway by today's meeting. Or maybe it was.
I don't think we made an official motion on it, but the request of staff was to send a letter with that
I
situation.
think we did, didn't we?
We might have.
Well, I got the letter.
Yeah, think you did.
Well, we certainly sent it to the letter. I didn't know if we put it in the form of a motion or.
Yeah, I think I did put it in form of a motion. With the understanding that Will Creations is, it doesn't preclude them from applying again in a future funding session, but
And I believe the staff recommendation specifies that, right? It does say that it remains eligible for future applications. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure that, we got back to what the motion was last month, is that the project needed to be underway.
Can I speak? I was wondering if at all possible that we could continue with this because of the climate that we're in right now. I use the dishwashing machine and the 3-sink compartment, and our daycare capacity has grown exponentially. We are now, when I first started this project, we only had 12 kids. We have over 30 now. We use the dishwasher and the 3-sink compartment as a means of sterilizing all of our equipment. And right now that is one of the most important things for us to do right now. For us to go back and to rebid this job will take me back into June of next year. And all we're using right now is a sink, is a mop bucket sink, and doing this, and it takes lots of man hours, and it's not timely for us to do. But it's something that we have to do. We need this. We need to continue on with this, and I'm asking you that you not postpone this until June of next year. We need it now.
So if the minutes do say, and I have a copy, we approve these minutes that you sent out, right? Because the minutes do say that it has to be underway by the 9th. So does that mean that we would have to make some other kind of motion if we want Pastor Smith to be able to continue?
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that we essentially can move to accept or reject your recommendation as we wish.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think we might have to, you're really pulling on parliamentary, but I think we have to do an emotion if we...
And also, if we don't have any further questions for Pastor Smith, we can also...
Well, I'm not sure that I know. I mean, because if we decide to go forward with this, I don't want to see a repeat of, delays. And I don't know if there's a timeline. I'd like to. So the city's perspective is if we decide to abandon last month's decision and not pull the funds for the project, it won't put us in any jeopardy of losing those funds. Am I correct?
So from our perspective, we do our annual funding round, starts in December. And so if we were to pull funds, we'd want to do it ahead of that because then we can put those funds back in the pool for other people to apply and Will Creations could reapply as well.
Okay, so that would give us some time. I'd like to see a really firm timeline with Pastor Smith because you mentioned you have one bid, but you're going to have to go back out and bid it again. So you've got some steps that you've got to go through. And I don't want to be in November, thinking about this question again. Do we pull it because we're not started?
My view is that if we do not accept the staff's recommendation, we are going to be here in November talking about this again.
Okay, can I ask a question? All I have to do is rebid the job, right? And you come to the meeting and tell me that I have some other reports that are due. Can you lay that out right now?
I mean,
Because I don't know, I didn't.
You can go ahead, it's okay.
Is there a report that's due?
So we have quarterly reports due every quarter.
Well, I understand.
So we're behind on the July, and then October will generate another quarterly report. And then, of course,
July?
we don't have the July quarterly report.
Yeah, you do.
We have three, we have three, so we're missing one from the last fiscal year.
Yeah, you got it.
Is it July or is it could be a different
I don't have it in front of me.
You got everything from this year. And if you don't, I got it right here.
Okay, and so we'll have another.
You got it, I know you have it.
We'll have another quarterly report due each quarter, of course.
Sure.
Next steps after the bidding would be to approve contracts, and then we'd have a pre-construction meeting about the Davis-Bacon, that all the contractor and if there's any subcontractors would have to attend, and staff would attend that.
Right.
And then I think from there we'd be able to approve kind of the move forward. I can't think of the phrase, but approval to move forward.
Yeah, notice to proceed or whatever.
Notice to proceed.
Okay, and then how long does that take?
It just depends on the length of the bid. I mean, we could schedule the conference anytime. Do you mean the length?
I'm asking you this because this is the same thing that I had to go through when you guys sent me the letter, only giving me 2 weeks to do it. And if they don't know right now, and I couldn't make it, and you gave me a deadline that wasn't attainable. So I'm here right now because yes, I've made some mistakes. I mean, and I'm not saying that in terms of report. But what I'm saying is that what I'm saying is this. Is that it's going to take, if I walk out of here and you take my funds, you capture the funds, I'm not going to be able to do the project, and the project really needs to be done because it's going to help the welfare of my daycare. Number two, and it won't be done until June. It won't be even underway until, when the capital funds are become available next year for December.
July.
And so this puts it off. This puts it off even more. And you're holding what are you holding it up for?
It does seem.
If you're holding it up for because of capturing because of the funds in December. I mean,
I think you're kind of spinning it that you've only been given 2 weeks, but.
No.
Because but I think for the benefit of the people who are listening to this and the audience, I don't want there to be a misunderstanding that you only have 2 weeks to comply with this.
I'm not saying that.
Because I've read through back,
Sure.
all year into all of the correspondence and minutes and things like that. There have been a lot of problems in getting this, started. And I'm sympathetic to that. Love the program. I mean, daycare centers are one of those programs I do want to see funded, but I do have a concern with the fact that the program is so far behind. I think not having a report last month made an impact, because I think we were expecting some sort of report or appearance from you. So I think that had some sort of impact, at least on me and on my decision to put forward that motion. So I just want to make sure that you understand that this project is way behind deadline. And I do understand that if you had to reapply for it in January, you couldn't start the project until July, but you certainly have a lot of planning time to get that done, and hopefully you can meet that. So I'm not convinced yet that we should do what we said we were going to do last month.
I would just echo what Becky said, that these funds were awarded in July of last year.
When was the agreement signed?
I don't have the date in front of me.
I think
I'd
it
have
was
to
June of
check.
this year.
It was June, it was signed in June of this year. And you also have to factor in the fact that, because of COVID, there was a lot of times there wasn't nothing going on.
We did have issues early on. Before we signed an agreement, we wanted to get some monitoring documentation submitted. That took a long time to be submitted to us, so that was something that delayed the project several months. And then also there was a time where we needed a SAM registration, so anyone taking a federal project needs to register in the federal SAM database, and that was another project delay. So I do feel that it's a misrepresentation, I guess, to maybe have it put out there like staff aren't working on this, because we have spent a lot of time trying to make this work. And I don't take any pleasure in this situation either.
Yeah, we're gonna spend a lot of staff time on this, and, there's certain federal requirements that we can't allow procurement that doesn't meet the guidelines. We have to make sure the project is following the CDBG rules. But I think the fact of the matter is we could have started this a year ago if those steps had all been taken concisely or quickly. We could have started this a while ago.
So it's a good time to check in and see where we're at. Does anybody want to make a motion? Are we leaning in a particular way? Typically, we try to operate like some kind of consensus. So this is an issue where there's no obvious consensus that's emerged. It's not like I can tell. So.
Before we get to that, I'd like to know, I guess this is maybe a question for the staff. Realistically, is it possible for Pastor Smith, possible for him to complete these projects before December, if we don't pull from today? Is it realistically possible for this project to be done by December?
I think that would depend on the duration of, I think it would depend on how long it would take the contractor to get in and do the project, and then how long the actual work would take. We don't really know that sort of timeline.
And that's the same question to you. You think you can get this project done by December if I don't pull the funds today?
I would not, I would have to go back to the contractor and ask that question. Because the only thing that would hold up the project right now is ordering the product. Right now, because of COVID, there's a backlog on everything. There's a backlog on building materials. There's a backlog on a lot of things. So if the project is approved, then I can submit for the materials, but I can't submit for the materials until the project is approved.
Yeah, I think the concern is there's a lot of unknown in this equation.
But it goes with every
problematic for me.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's not under your control, but there's too many unknowns now, and given the time that the project has taken, not to realize it's too many unknowns to take a risk of moving forward with it. At least that's my opinion.
Would anyone else like to jump in? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I will.
This is my first meeting.
Well, I did it at mine, so you don't want to be mean. Yeah, I'm gonna move that we recapture the funds and invite them to apply in the next process. So hopefully it would be better because I've got some legwork done at this point, so.
I'll second.
Okay.
And I believe the motion here is to recapture funds in line with recommendation, but also to allow further future applications. Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say aye. And do we have any abstentions? Any abstentions, say aye. And we have in our packet a letter from the executive director of Successful Living. I'm not sure, but I think he says in the letter that he's not able to make it, and he sent two representatives, so we'll let the representatives of Successful Living. All right, we've challenged our social distancing issues.
Yeah, I suppose so.
You could sit up front, that's a possibility.
There is a stack of chairs here. I can flip a couple of these around if that's comfy.
Can't get too close.
Sorry, would the staff mind just kind of giving a recap? I read a lot, and I'm afraid I don't want to get it all muddled.
Yeah.
So, just want to make sure I have it all correct.
I'll give you the cliff notes, or you can if you.
No, go ahead.
The short version is there are FY21 funds allocated to Successful Living originally to acquire 3 homes. So far, they've acquired 1 home. There's some vacancy issues like we've talked about with other projects going on. So we wanted to get your opinion, I guess, if you think the 2 remaining projects should go forward or if the funds should go back in the pot. There are some other issues that Successful Living is working through, not only with vacancy, but previous projects. So the FY20 Hickory project is vacant still, but I think that's close to being leased up based on the most recent information that I heard. And then the last FY21 project on Hollywood, typically there's a 6-month window that projects lease up in, and that project has not leased up and it does not have a rental permit yet, but I'll let you speak to that. You have more of the details than I do.
And these were home funds?
Correct.
Okay. And fiscal year 21, okay.
Yep.
So I can introduce myself. My name is Caitlin McGowan. I just started in July as the Grants and Development Director. I took over for Carla when she retired. And this is Kevin.
Yeah, my name is Kevin Sanders. As of last week, I'm the new housing director for Successful Living. And we collectively would like to thank all of you for inviting us to this meeting to discuss some of the concerns within our agency, which we are currently trying to work rectify.
So as Brianna mentioned, there's the issues with the vacancy over at Hickory. Kevin, myself, the intake coordinator, with kind of all of us stepping into our new roles, we believe that we will have that filled. Would you say employees and funding?
Yes, actually we do have one resident at Hickory, who's currently at Hickory, and we are actually two referrals, and so we're just in the process of waiting for the funding.
Their funding from their case managers for services. So that period of affordability, the 3 residents should be moving in as soon as we get those. So that would be satisfied. And then over at Hollywood, kind of one of the issues we ran into was that the recommended contractor that we bid it out to just stopped responding to us, and we waited a long enough time to give them the chance to respond. We ended up having to rebid that. That concrete work has all been done, and we've applied for the rental permit. So, yes. So we have that scheduled and ready to go. So even since sending in this letter just earlier, we have made significant strides. Myself and the intake coordinator have created and developed more of a marketing plan. We're both going to go back out into the community within the next couple weeks and access other referral sources. One of the major issues we ran into with kind of having these vacancies is just the transient population that we work with of adults with chronic mental illness. But also due to COVID, a lot of our referrals come from Iowa or from the IHH, Integrated Health Homes through Abbey Center, as well as the East Central region. So during COVID, they had a lot of turnover with case managers. And we definitely saw a huge impact with that in just clients being served and having referrals sent out for housing, mental health support. And then with East Central region, per HUD guidelines, we can't have a client move in if they're not able to pay for the rent or they don't have an ability, we have to collect rent. East Central region changed their parameters for rent assistance significantly, and so it's pretty non-existent for our client population now. And that's caused a major issue with clients who have no income being able to initially move in. Once they have our services, we get them set up with Social Security disability, general assistance, things like that. But it does cause a significant delay in that way too.
So they have to have some sort of income before they can move in?
Per home guidelines, we have to charge rent. We can't have someone coming in and not collecting rent from them.
Okay. And you said that you were awarded funds to purchase 3 homes?
Correct.
And right now you've only purchased 1?
Correct.
When you say like the contractor delay, is it on this current home?
It's on the one we purchased that ended up delaying then getting the rental permit and the inspection set up. That's over at Hollywood Boulevard.
And for the other homes that need to be purchased yet, what's the status of that?
So we're working with realtors. They're sending us various ones they find that might fit ours. A lot of them are going to require a lot of work to be able to fit in to the requirements we have for home funds and being able to have our residents in there. But we're fully prepared to purchase more homes. We just wanted to focus on getting Hickory filled before moving forward so we could satisfy that first.
What was the total grant award?
Total, it was $144,000. They've spent $44,990, and there's $99,000 remaining.
So I guess so if you purchase the homes and then you have to rehab them, but in the meantime you have a lot of vacancies, and I understand that you also get paid by this.
So for our residents who are, yes, mentally ill, we bill Medicaid, yeah.
Right, okay, but that's not for property,
That's not a requirement.
that's for case management, basically.
Right, that's for us providing mental health counseling and
Right,
services and staffing.
I guess it doesn't make sense to go forward to buy 2 more homes if you still have all these vacancies in the other houses.
Right, it's within recent months, we've seen referrals increasing. We're kind of, myself and the intake coordinator are getting more creative on where we're looking for referrals and things like that. And so we're kind of changing our tactics going forward. IHH and ECR, their staffing is a lot better, so we're seeing a lot more referrals now. That was our major referral source, and at that time, over COVID, I was a have-home lead, and at that time, I wasn't able to really even know whose case manager was who, because it was changing so often. So we've seen more stability that way. We've seen referrals increasing in just the recent months here.
I am a little concerned about that they're still working. A third of the money essentially has been awarded, and they don't have that third project done or rented. And the timeline for finishing that other, expending that other 99,000, are we able to modify to funds spent at this point, that, you know, the project is based with what they have done, and we could recapture the other 99 if we wanted to, we could go that route?
That's the direction we were looking for, is what should we do with that remaining 99? I should also say that for all home projects, we have to do home underwriting, and vacancy rate is a part of that. Like, we have to make sure the project can cash flow. So the higher the vacancy rate, the more difficult it is to underwrite. So with the high vacancy rates, we wouldn't be able to underwrite one of these new projects at the moment. The vacancy rates have improved. At one point, it was almost 50%, but that's why staff, we said at one point, like, we can't let another one of these projects go forward until the vacancy improves.
So they could keep the house in Hollywood, get the rental permit, get that all occupied, and then we kind of come back and pay the rest of the 99,000 in December.
Yeah, we're not recommending anything with the property that they already went through the acquisition. It's just the ones that haven't proceeded yet.
So the only thing you have to do now, you have the rental permit inspection.
Yes, in October.
It is gonna, it's already scheduled.
Yes, the work is done, and we applied for that and everything.
And how many bedrooms is in that house?
That's 3, isn't it? Yes.
So will there be 3?
They would begin the creative affordability afterwards, yes. And so we were kind of hoping to maybe come back and revisit in December, now that, and just in the last couple of weeks with new staff coming in and getting creative with referrals and making things work. You know, we've got Hickory, we've got 3 people scheduled to be there and satisfy that creative affordability. And so it was our hope that we could continue to try and do everything we can, and maybe come back and revisit and discuss our progress in December, if you guys felt comfortable with that. Because we really are motivated to increase those and to get more options open.
Yes, we're really dealing, especially Kate and myself. We have ongoing needs, but the key was to create a strategic game plan to really be assertive and reach out to our community partners to fill up the homes with residents. We are really motivated to try our best, which is why we're here.
And Roger has...
You started in July.
So I've been working on and off with Successful Living since about 2010, actually. I was a head home lead at one of our houses for a few years when I returned from another position, and then got promoted up to this position.
Okay, but you just started last week.
Yes, but I've been employed with Successful Living for 5 years, and
so they were...
So it's all changing, okay.
Yeah.
So you haven't, okay, you didn't start...
We're not brand new here. No,
Yes.
we're very familiar with everything. Another thing Roger has implemented and is trying to get going is reaching out to the city and to HUD and to try and figure out a way that we can utilize vouchers in our houses. We're not able to do that for a single room occupancy, just the way it works out. So we would hopefully be able to find a creative way to be able to have clients utilize vouchers from HUD in our homes too.
It seemed to me that the Hickory, the Hollywood house, is obviously going to stay. But maybe go ahead and put the rest of the money back in, and then you can come back in. Because if we don't get an update from you until December, that's really too late to figure out the budget for the next round, isn't it?
I think we start, isn't it just, I'd have to look at the calendar, but.
Yeah, we usually put the applications out mid-December, so it'd be kind of around the same time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think anytime we're discussing one of these projects, there are 2 things we're trying to balance. One is using the money in the best way possible, and the other is committing projects that we funded. I mean, that's come up in different ways in both the last one and this one. And what gives me reservation in this case is that I think those 2 things diverge. I think that the best use of the money would probably be to recapture along the lines the staff recommends, but I also don't feel as though, I also feel as though there might be more we could do to commit to this project. I mean, we haven't been talking about this project for months. This is the first time we've talked about this project in quite a while. So Because, you recapture projects, you put a note in there saying that an agency is eligible for a next application round, but that will still appear in that next application round, right? You will see that the agency had funds recaptured last time. Is there a way to sort of mitigate or cancel the, that?
You mean like that looks like a bad mark on the
Yeah,
record?
it does look like a bad mark when the agency applies again. I mean, it would be a factor, is there a way to cancel that?
I don't want it to be a bad mark, because
I don't want
I don't
it to be
think
a
it
bad mark,
necessarily
okay.
is a bad mark, but, for whatever circumstances, go on that, it's just that they haven't been able to successfully launch the project, and so,
Due to, in some sense, understandable circumstances.
yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
isn't it better to get that money to, the projects that can get off the ground?
Well, I think that nobody should get a bad mark for what's happened over the last year, for
Right.
anything,
Yep.
basically. Well, maybe something, but, because it's been a very challenging year. I mean,
Yes.
I also think that Successful Living has a pretty good track record, from what I understand. And that, so you have the budget, you have everything in order, pretty much, except you haven't been able to fulfill what needs to be done. So then it wouldn't be very difficult to come back in, to reapply. You know what I'm saying? I mean, for the next two houses.
Right, and we can understand the reservations. It's understanding that the deadline for purchasing houses is until June of 2022. And, the other issue, so we still have quite a bit of time to locate and then get those ready to go and then start the period of affordability after that's approved. And then, the deadline for filling Hickory is December. Just in the last couple of weeks with working together, we've identified and located 3 clients that will be hopefully moving in once we get the funding soon, so we still have a couple months to get that done. And so that's kind of why we were hoping to get a little bit more time to get that stuff going and show that this is a daily conversation between Kevin, our intake coordinator, Roger, and I, and we're really motivated to try and utilize these funds the best that we can.
Can we invite him back next month to see what's going on, and then because that will be November, and then that will give you time to figure out what's going to go on in December. And table it for now.
I believe we have that option, do we not?
Mm-hmm.
What would the staff attitude be toward a shorter term check-in as opposed to December?
I think that would make it easier for, to know about the funding for the next round. That it just, gives them less time to make progress, but we would know their inspection status by then, correct? You said November, that's 2 months out.
Yeah, was November the thought, Mary?
Or October.
The reason why I would want to go to November is because we didn't give Little Creations 2 months, we gave them 1 month, so.
We gave them many.
Well, I wasn't here for that, so I'd like to at least get a progress report from them, if you want to do 2 months with a 30-day check-in.
Yeah.
But, that would be it for me.
And that would be very doable for us. We would be more than happy to provide an update next month. I keep thinking next month is November, but next month in October, and then we could come in person either both times and talk about it, or come back in November and give a final update and make decisions, and we would be comfortable.
What were you talking about, the vacancy rates? There's something that you all need to do?
There's a few things. So that Hickory project is in danger of having the entire sum being owed back to HUD because there's an 18-month deadline. And if the project isn't leased up, then the funds have to go back to HUD. So that would need to be leased up, which you gave an update on that. It sounds like it's close. And then also they have to have a reasonable vacancy rate for us to be able to underwrite. Usually that's around 5 to 10%. And right now their vacancy rate is 30%, 29%. So,
So, and that way you talk to see an improvement in that in 30 days, which would be a problem, but I could go with a 30-day check-in and, maximum 2 months to see, there's certain parameters you want to see them having that, or benchmarks, I could go with that.
Is there something specific you'd want to see at their update that would make it?
I'm going to go back and reread it all over again now that I've actually sat and talked about it. There's lots going on in my mind.
That's kind of the part I find difficult is what the benchmark would be. The vacancy rate, it is hard to make a vacancy rate in short term, especially in a big gap between 5 to 10% of what the current, what the current rate is. So.
Well, I'm a little concerned because some of the presenting applicants tonight talked about being able to close that gap pretty quickly. So I don't know why it's such a problem. There must be an element that I'm not seeing. Maybe it's that referral element, I'm not sure, but that's something I don't have to go back and
I think part of it is that if the folks that are moving in don't have some kind of rental assistance,
There you go.
then,
That's
that's
a big
they
thing.
can't.
My first thought is there's surely the lack of voucher.
Right, yeah, and we would love to find a way to somehow mitigate that issue. So we'll continue to work on that aspect of it, but it does create a struggle.
Realistically, that's probably not going to get closed in 30 days, right?
That would be very probably difficult to do just in the nature.
Yeah, so if we give them 2 months with the check-in period and then the October meeting, that would still create enough time to recapture those unspent funds if we want to do that, right?
I think so.
Okay. Do we want to send them packing with, some instructions, but do we want to see the better vacancy rate, or? I'm actually a little concerned about being able to find housing, to tell you the truth, because it goes so quickly, and,
That has been
that's been a huge issue, so.
but we've seen enough come through that we think we would be confident in eventually being able to find the right ones. They might take a little modification, but we previously had done 5-bedroom houses too, which we may need to change kind of our model and what we look for in a house to be able to find, I think, the right kind of parameters there. So we're trying to look at every avenue we can to change that, and looking at other ways we can help with our clients or our residents getting rental assistance, other programs available that maybe we're underutilizing, we're not fully aware of, or so that's another avenue we're working with too.
So the biggest concern is the vacancy rate, because they have until June 22 to purchase property, according to the agreement.
Yeah, the vacancy, their projects that are already underway.
Roughly how many movements are needed to hit that 5%?
That's a good question. There's how many? 3 at Hickory.
Hollywood has 3. And then, at our other houses that are generally, it kind of depends, one person goes to the hospital and needs a higher level of care, so then they're gone, and we have 4 out of the 5 rooms, so it's kind of spread throughout the houses, just depending on the different residents and their mental health needs. So we may have to wait, a month in between the funding for the next person getting approved, and so it's just a very transient population. It's very hard to pinpoint those. But those are the 2 houses that we have 3 at,
And Friendship, I guess,
And
3.
Friendship, yes.
Yeah.
Which Friendship would be our last priority because it's different in the situation here, so.
This may be a silly question, but so roughly how long would that lease up process take to get those 3 movements? Do you kind of have an average of 1 month per lease up?
Yeah.
For Hickory, I would say probably within the next 3 weeks or so.
Yeah. We're just waiting on kind of the wrap up
Yes.
from case managers and things like that through Medicaid approving their funding to move in and receive our mental health funding, or mental health services, I mean. So within a couple weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, we'd have Hickory built, we imagine. That's our goal.
So then an update next month would be,
Yeah, we've got a benchmark perhaps.
right,
We've got a potential benchmark perhaps.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
I like that, yeah.
yeah.
If that's what we want to do, does this need to be in the form of a motion?
Could we, just for good measure? I think we said lease up of Hickory and then a rental permit at Hollywood. Did that come up?
And is that something we're thinking October or November?
Well, I think the lease on Hickory would be next month, but they said they can do it in
So we will
2
do.
weeks. And they already have a rental inspection scheduled.
Yeah, for mid-October, so it might be right before the next meeting or just right after. Yeah, so that might be a little hard for next month.
I think that November would make sense if they have their inspection to have that permit in mid-October.
The meeting dates are October 21st and November 18th. If that makes a difference.
23rd. Yeah, that's one of the one. Caleb, do you want to make a motion? I mean, you got at the benchmark.
Best motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, and I believe the motion is to invite Successful Living to make a report on October 21st with the aforementioned benchmarks that would agree on is written down, and I would be able to just immediately recite off the top of my head.
I got it, don't worry.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On to item 6 on our agenda, which is the maker. And I believe that our main goal here is to provide any comments and maybe we can approve either as written or as modified. So what comments or issues do we have to raise?
Yeah, interesting reading through it.
No one's ever said that before.
It had interesting parts.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
it is interesting to me, so, a lot of reading. And linking to clicking on other links and trying to find my way back, and all that kind of stuff, but, yeah, I thought it was good. I don't have any really comments.
The shelters for people going through homelessness appear in the form of a kind of an unbudgeted surprise sort of expense. I think there are, at least I would want to know if there are plans in the future to that not be so much of a surprise.
Say that again, I'm not following.
Yeah, the spending on homelessness and winter shelters sort of, at least as I read it, appeared to be kind of an unbudgeted or surprised expense. I might be wrong about that.
I think the one you're referring to is probably a CDBG CV project. Shelter House did a winter warming shelter in one of our funding rounds. I can't remember if that was the first or the second pot of nonprofit funding that we opened up. The city does have a budget or has had in recent years a budget for winter shelter, for the overnight shelter.
It kind of falls outside of the normal legacy agency funding, so to speak, because of the way in which Shelter House is the only one you know, to be able to step up to the plate and do it, so. I guess for me, I mean, I'd love to see this city move into more, some of those essential services that some of the nonprofits are funding, or providing. I'd like to see more of a process of funding rather than a, you know, application. That's, you know, something I'd like to see. If I could make that happen while I'm in my 3 to 6 years on this board, I will make that happen.
Already planning the re-election campaign?
Yeah. No, that's why I said 3 to 6 years, so, I think that, you know, this is my one biggest, you know, comment about that. One question I did have when I was reading through with the new and emerging agencies, I forget what the requirement is to move, you know, from that. Do they apply for that for how many years? And then do they move into the legacy agency status?
So right now, the legacy agencies are listed in our city tax report, and so, yeah, an agency would have to apply, and it would come to this commission, and we go through the public process, and we would have to amend our city steps. And so we did have an agency interested. We asked them to wait until our next application process for agencies to kind of request that at that time.
In the nitpicky but practical category, there is a spelling error on page 38.
Thank you.
Iowa City Police Department is written as Iowa City Policy Department.
Is that like a Freudian slip?
They perhaps occasionally make that. Okay.
In my reading on the project, I first thought that some project was delayed by COVID-19, like work on the Liberty Park. Will we see that on the next year?
I think the Weatherby Park, we had several public, or not public facilities, neighborhood improvement projects that were delayed, part from derecho and part from just everything going on with the pandemic. But I believe Weatherby is done, and so is Via Park now, but those will fall in FY22 for completion.
Yeah, we just didn't get them closed out in time, but they are complete.
Weatherby did play into why, because I mean, on reading the tables, it seemed like non-housing community development didn't get a lot of attention, and I think that the delay of Weatherby was some of that, was it? It was not.
Yeah.
So do we have any other further issues or questions on the paper? Now for this, we do need to make
Yes, please.
well, I can move to approve the paper as amended with that spelling error corrected from page 38. And do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. So we're on to item 7, overview of the scoring criteria. I think that this will, at least at the start be a presentation here, but at least of the criteria. But I think that the idea here is especially for first year commissioners to take a look at the criteria, any questions or raise any issues or concerns.
Yeah, could we open it up to first year commissioners first and just see if anyone has questions initially?
Right, besides me and Becky.
Yeah.
Caleb?
Is that it?
Mm-hmm.
I have several comments.
Okay, why don't you start, and then I'll know if I'm, you might be asking a question that I have, so.
Well, this is my first meeting, however, I have been filling out when I was working, I filled out these applications for many years. It can be frustrating as an applicant that, well, the City of Iowa City home and CDBG applications were not the only funding applications that I prepared in my career. I prepared many. This particular scoring, I know it's called a criteria, but I think it's always been a suggestion for the commissioners who are scoring applications. Every other funding application I ever submitted had a hard and fast scoring system. So when an applicant is preparing a project before, especially when it's a housing project, because that takes a lot of time and can take a lot of money to even plan, you score the project before you send in the application to see if it's even worth pursuing trying to get funding. For this particular system, you prepare an application according to these guidelines, and then you get to the meeting when the commissioners have scored everything, and it's all over the map. There's not a lot of consistency in what's scored. So I would like to either see some changes, or I would also like to see more of the goals in city steps, because city steps is a prescribed document by HUD. I mean, the city's able to do some narrative in that, but really HUD says this is what has to be included in that report. So then match this more to what the city steps requires, rather than some of the things that are here that could be possible schooling items. So.
Well, I agree 100%.
Yes.
I've done many applications also, and honestly, when you're writing applications and it comes with this scoring, I, as a writer, I pay attention to that. I'm, making sure I'm answering the questions, giving the kind of information that the funders want to be able to make that decision. So I also would, be urging us to, if we're going to include this, then we take it seriously. If we say high priorities, the city wants us to meet the high impact areas of service, that we start with high impact areas of service and not with low impact areas of service. So I come from there. I guess one of the questions that I did have was regarding, again, these are home funds. Is there a matching dollar amount required?
25%.
Yeah, we have to match 25%.
That's collectively.
Okay, so I am not sure that the area to leveraging resources and budget scores that particular.
It's a lot, you get like 25 points.
Well, it says, do you have realistic cost estimates? Does a project leverage community partnerships and or volunteer resources? And then does a project leverage other financial resources? None of those three really say is the agency meeting the 25% match. And I think I'd like to see that included. That's a hard, fast rule, we should be sticking to it.
But I don't necessarily agree with you.
Okay, you can disagree, that's okay.
Because it's really the city that has to prove to HUD that the city has provided 25% match.
Okay, then I've got the information wrong, because I thought it was the applicant that had to do a 25%.
They like to know that, but for instance, when I was working, I keep saying that, but so a lot of the times when you hear me speak, I'm in refer to the housing fellowship, because that was my career, okay? There were properties that were owned that didn't pay property taxes, okay? Which you can quantify, and that provides a large amount of match for the home funds that were used to purchase those properties. So for instance, if neighborhood centers receive some home funds for rehab for their child care, but the child care is free, so they don't get any revenue from those, providing those services, they don't have the opportunity to say to the city, here's our 25% match, because it has to be non-federal funds. But collectively, with all the other home projects that can provide the 25% match, the city then pulls that all together and says to HUD, yeah, we met our 25% match.
In my mind, the project in-kind can provide a match also. It doesn't have to be hard cash dollars, so I don't know if that makes a difference. So if a project were to include some sort of in-kind donation services.
I don't think that.
Okay.
Is that allowed?
I just want to get clarification on that. If we're not requiring a 25% match from the applicants, then I'm okay. But if we are,
Do you know what it says in the guide?
Would that be a scoring?
I don't feel like it's a hard and fast 25%. I know that we need to demonstrate it, but I don't know that we've said that explicitly.
You mean as a commission in terms of our decisions? No, I don't think we've ever said that as an explicit.
I'll go back and, because to tell you the truth, I was thinking that's maybe why DDIP didn't meet the criteria is because they didn't have a match. And most of the other agencies did have some sort of a match that had at least 25%.
No, they were wanting to do direct payments to households and just non-eligible
Yeah,
projects,
yeah.
so it wasn't any other
Right.
sort of criteria.
But that was the one thing I picked up in their project when I looked at the budget a little bit, is I noticed there wasn't a match.
I was just going to show an example from the CAPER. This is how we calculated our match for FY21. So we took several of the projects that were completed and we were able to calculate the amount of property taxes that were forgiven. There are other eligible forms of match, but this is like one of the easiest to track, so it's what we've used.
And then you can kind of bank that from year to year, can't you?
Yep.
That's the other thing is that the city can bank that so they can say, we met our match in FY21, and then they've got some matching in the bank, if you will, for FY22 or whatever.
Thanks for that education. That helps. I'm serious. It helps to learn this stuff.
This is really kind of maybe a little bit of minutia about. I think that there should be more weight given to, does the applicant have the capacity to successfully complete the project? Because you get 0 to 5 points. And I think there's a lot of applicants that come in that the federal programs are not terribly easy. Sometimes the compliance is difficult. Sometimes the reporting requirements are, it's a learning curve. And I think to be good stewards of the money, that when we provide recommendations to the city council, we should make sure that the applicants have the good capacity to work with the staff and carry out the project. And I think that should be weighted a little bit more.
I think that's a common sentiment. I mean, my sense is that if all of us were to really go through this document, we disagree with at least one of the weightings. I mean, just I think does this project leverage other financial resources should be weighted a fair bit less than it is. And then does the project provide a long-term solution that the need identified should be at least double, what's listed. But and I think that's probably one of the difficulties that we tend to have with using it, and sort of shows, I think, some of the good and bad of of the criteria. Like, it's really good at telling the difference between a really good project and a really low scoring project. So like looking through some of the history of allocations, it's pretty rare for anything under about 60 to ever get funding. Most years, we deny funding to everything or almost everything under 60. I don't think anything under 50 has been funded. But then it starts to get really tricky when you look at things in like the 70s and 80s. Like, there's rarely a meaningful difference between like in FY20, one got a 78 and one got a 79. Like this criteria has never been good at drawing that kind of distinction. Whereas it's really good at distinguishing between like this 21 down here and this 88, over here. And to some extent, I think that's okay. I mean, I think what we do is we sort of bring the scores to the table, and where we see some small differences, that's when we start getting into the strengths and weaknesses of a particular application, where you can mention, hey, this does a really good job at finding a long-term solution to the problem, but perhaps it just leverages not quite as many financial resources, but in this case, we should prioritize the one or the other. So I think that's probably the good and the bad of the rubric, and what it can do, and what we should try to make it do, unless we just like systematically rewrote it in some way that we'd probably never be able to get to.
Can I say one more thing? I really appreciate what you said, because I understand that. To get so many points for the immediate income that's targeted, 30 is under 80, right? Everything's under 80, according to the Home Fund. So, it's just, this guide doesn't fit with some other funding sources when you're talking about housing. And I wish it could be improved a little bit, as far as points go. Because I always have in mind, my sports mind, the highest score, the highest score gets the most, right? But that's not what happens in this system. Again, and that's coming from the former applicant.
So I think we had a request for public comment, which I have no problem with. Don't you, Sarah?
Yeah. Do you mind, please? So I want to just offer my 2 cents on this as someone who attends so many public meetings and watches bodies like yours deliberate these scoring criteria. Is that, I think one of the things you don't have in the data that you're looking at right now is the differences among scorers. You're looking at, I assume it's an average, a mean, probably not, it's probably a mean, yeah.
Could you, I'm having.
Oh, sure, sorry. So what the scores that you're looking at here are the I'm assuming the mean scores. It doesn't show the differences among the scorers. So you have 9 individual commissioners whose scores translate into those mean scores. And that is really where the variability happens and where the test of your rubric as a tool happens, because 9 scorers should use this tool and come up with mostly similar scores if the tool is a reliable way to assess the application. And I have not seen that in action. I've seen wildly varied scores. And so that's, I think, something for you to think about, like, what's the validity of your tool? And you'll have to forgive me because I worked as a secretary at ACT for like 2 years, so I think I know what I'm talking about this. But truly, like, that you have some clear data that the tool is not able to predict the outcome, and I don't think that's quite right. The other thing that I just want to reaffirm what Becky said is that, I'm also getting to that point where I'm just straight up old. And the city used to give money, kind of like by right, to people who provided essential services and didn't send it through this whole process. And that changed, oh no, 15, was anyone around that? Then it got kicked into this whole bracket here, but it hasn't always been so whatever, and so I think, not talking about the like the home allocation, but like the aid agencies allocations, which you guys also talked about the scoring criteria for. So just to say, like, I'm sure the reality of America can't possibly stand that every time there are new butts in these chairs that everyone wants to change how we do it again, because everyone thinks they have the better idea. It's got to be difficult to watch that too. But I think the reason you keep having this conversation is because it's still not quite right. And the applicants are letting me know that. And I think it's really important to hear that because Marianne and Becky are right that nonprofits really depend on these local resources to execute some projects with incredible vision. They work hard to demonstrate to you the value of that. And then when it comes here and it can get derailed because someone decides, in the fourth quarter that they want to prioritize the criteria that didn't appear on the form, or you guys come with wildly different ideas about the same application, it's pretty disruptive. And as Mary Ann said, some of these projects, when they come before you, people have been considering them and planning for them for years. So I just want to reinforce some of those methods and say, I know you guys take this responsibility really seriously. You think about your answers really carefully. And so it's got to be hard to hear that people have concerns about it, but I think it's because we all do care so much about how the city invests these resources and what the priorities are. And people want to bring you things that fit with the city's needs. And the best way for that to happen is to be as clear and as consistent as possible in letting people know whether they've met those benchmarks. Does that make sense? Everyone's looking away, so I can't tell if I talk too long or if I'm saying something kind of annoying or...
I think it's a helpful comment.
Okay. All right, thanks.
What Sarah's mentioning is called, I believe, construct validity. I apparently was ACT. It's not how the instrument measures what it is you're trying to measure. In fact,
So can you fix that for us, please?
I don't think there is such a thing as construct validity as a consent rubric, so there's not at this time. I just don't think that's a standard you can hold rubrics up to. They'll never get there. Not in this sort of rubric. I mean, we have discussed this for a long time in a number of different ways, and I do feel like the point system probably provides a misleading impression, the impression that there is a precision of a kind that probably doesn't exist. I see it as a way to guide conversations. I look at when I look at the FY20 or the FY19 scores, I start by looking for large patterns and differences. The first thing that I see when I look at FY19 is I see that one project scored a 21, and I see this cluster in the low to mid 80s. I mean, to me, that's what rubrics do, and then after that, it's a matter of discussing, what we want to prioritize, and the answers that we come up with year to year are fairly consistent. The scores at the highest tend to get funded at the largest percent allotment. The scores at the lowest tend to get not funded at all or at the lowest percentage allotment.
Well, I'll have to sit through this process and see. My only point that I've referenced point is aid to agencies, and to be honest, I don't know what the heck those scores mean. Well, the year that everything, that we got more money, I was upset because I'm former director of community, we had the highest score and high impact, and we were getting one of the biggest cuts. So I'm gonna have to sit through this, but I won't sit passively surprised. Because, you know, if I saw something come down that I thought was unfair, I'm not gonna let that go. So it's hard for me in the home process because I haven't been through this. So it's, you know, my point of reference is just different.
So when we do our regular annual allocation, we'll have one of the meetings before we put the application out, we'll have you guys approve the scoring criteria. So that'll be a good time to kind of implement any changes you view when you're going through this process with the same group. So it'll be nice having like the same HCBC move forward with us.
So we've got that one process, and man, I don't know if you mind me asking, but will we also be doing a special funding round with ARPA funds? Do we know yet, or when will we get that information?
We don't know, probably at some point, but we don't know yet when.
That one's going to be interesting.
Definitely.
That may come with its own set of requirements too, depending on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what I'm hearing is that this scoring system is not probably objective as far as awarding funding to organizations. So is there a better way to do this other than business scoring? I mean, I understand that I don't want to give the impression that we want to favor certain institution over others, but they don't need to be treated equally when it comes to funding, to public funding. We can find a different way of scoring or awarding this funding. I won't think of it. I agree that this scoring thing is not. It's not the best way to do it.
I do think if we want to get in the weeds on that we should probably put it on an agenda, because I think this agenda item was just intended to be kind of an overview, but if it's something we want to revisit for that upcoming funding round, we would be bringing you the application guide and the materials, like Erica said, for your approval or adjustment.
We can put it on the agenda.
So I just finished reviewing grants for the Community Foundation, and one of the things that I found really helpful was that, I mean, we have the meeting tomorrow where the team comes together, and, you know, because I scored my way and somebody else scored their way, so I'm sure our scores are different. One of the things I found really helpful was the comment section, that I could go to this, almost like your cover sheet, so it was a page where I have to do all the scoring. Each one I have to indicate whether or not I have a conflict, and then there's questions. And so if I found something difficult, and like, you know, instead of a project budget, somebody submitting a P&L, I'm not giving them a score until, you know, I see a project budget, or somebody else could say, I wonder about this, and that actually was good for me because it sparked, you know, it helped me go back to the application, maybe reread something a little bit differently. So that might be something, you know, I don't know if we, you know, have that happen, but it's an ability for us kind of to just put comments on something. I'm wondering about this, you know, or I'm questioning, you know, fund balance, or, you know, something like that, or the lack of, you know, volunteers, you know, their volunteer pool has gone down, you know, what is that affecting their ability to provide services and things like that. So, you know, it was helpful anyway in that process, yeah.
So I think, yeah, we should maybe discuss it further.
I do have a quick question as a first year. It seemed like the one with Pastor Smith, we had a lot of issues on drawbacks in the timeline. From what I saw, where he didn't have it done somewhere, the budget didn't seem accurate. How do we verify that? as the application comes in. Does that fall within that, 0 to 5, that is the project cover realistic cost estimate? Are they required to submit maybe like an engineer's projected budget? Or where do they?
I think typically we ask for a scope of work, or that was a CDBG project, so there's a little bit more flexibility, I guess, in what we ask for capacity there. So scope of work, or sometimes people will submit bids. One of the FY22 projects for neighborhood centers, like they had a couple bids submitted with their application. So, I mean, for example, like the Little Creations project on here from FY21, it didn't really have a great score. So I guess that could have been an early indicator that maybe we would have seen some problems. But that was, I guess, before my time, so.
It also came up.
Did it?
In the discussion. Yeah, the score was a factor, and there was some disagreement for funding based on the score. And the competing prioritization or consideration is trying to fund a wide range of agencies that might be able to reach new populations not reached by other agencies. Which is hard to capture the score, how you balance those two things.
Or for example, if a project is funded, for the underwriting, we have to see certain documentations of fiscal capacity and those kind of things to be able to underwrite the project. So I guess technically, even if it was awarded, it's possible that the project wouldn't go forward if they couldn't demonstrate those things.
Yeah, some of these things are what we try to include in our staff review on the cover sheet. Like the SAMs or the DUNS number, that can always be acquired later, but a lot of people have it already, so they can just include it, that's already done. But I think if we have major concerns about missing items, we put that in the cover sheet.
I think those kinds of issues might come into play a little more in some of the newer emerging organizations, or like Little Creations. I agree now. It's a high need area. I can see where it would generate a discussion, but to go back to what Marianne was saying is, if the agency or entity doesn't have the capacity, to manage, that, then we end up, pulling the funds back, and that's not much money either.
So, I guess to loop around on this agenda item, if we have a summary, it's that everyone takes the scoring criteria seriously, though that might not mean we follow them. We're certainly not required to follow them by the rules to create this commission, and we might not follow them exactly in any completely spelled out way, though it's always the goal to take the score seriously, and they do always correlate pretty well with funding levels.
Well, Matt, when you said that Little Creations, for instance, scored low, and so there's quite a discussion.
I think it was the most discussed item on that particular
okay.
List right there.
Let's see. I guess it would be 3. Is it 3? 2 does the project assist any specific vulnerable populations? And maybe that needs to be a higher score. If you if there's some targeted areas that, the city would want to fund, maybe that needs to be higher, so that would pull it up, and you wouldn't, so an agency that were submitting a budget for a need that wasn't addressed as high impact would get a much lower score. And that could possibly even that out a little bit if you assign a different score to the vulnerable population, specific need, need of service. So that could possibly be a little bit higher, which could then skew the score greater. There's only 5 points right now.
But even that's subjective. I mean, what
Well,
application ever comes in here that doesn't provide some sort of service to a vulnerable population?
Well, with the city steps, you've got the high,
That's true.
medium, and
That's
low.
true.
Yeah. And to tell you the truth, I wouldn't mind seeing, the city say, where you want to direct their funds is this, kind of service or this area, wouldn't mind seeing that. So give us some guidance.
Peter, I wanted to know if you had any input on, is there anything you'd add as to how you use the scoring criteria, or, you're in your third year as well, you're in your third round?
It's very subjective, I'm sorry to say that. But I look at the information provided to us in the application, and can make a personal judgment about one's higher score or not. I kind of go through the process of, let's say that I reason myself, okay, well, this is going to provide this information. I think this, to me, and I would not score high because I don't think they met this criteria the way it should. I go through that. I mean, I just don't, maybe some people don't even read in detail and before they score, but they just try to adjust and things. But I remember in one meeting we had a situation where people had to really adjust the score just to bring up some score on it, which I thought was best to do it. But definitely if we want to remove the personal elements of the scoring, maybe I'll find a different way. This way it's definitely not going to come up with the same score every time. I mean, each person has their own.
It's rare, I think, for people to come up with the same score. There's often a pattern. So, I score one application 60, the other application 70. You score that first one 55, the second one 65. I mean, it does tend to be those sorts of relations. So my scores are a little higher than your scores, but they're the same, I still scored this one higher than this one, and that tends to usually happen. It's pretty rare for anyone to score, like you have 11 applications there, for half of them to score one of them the highest, and the other half to score that one the lowest. Like that never happens. I've never seen that. So like if you were to take on FY21, those ones that scored 90, probably no one in the room scored those applications the lowest. That would be pretty rare. Like have you seen that? Did anyone score little creations the highest? I doubt that happened.
Yeah, it would go on.
So it's like, there are differences from person to person, but we tend to coordinate at least that much. We're not completely all over the map. We have a couple of options here. We can put this on the agenda at the next meeting, which, if we do, we do. I think if we do, we should come up with some sort of plan for what we want to see. Do we want to remove the human elements, or do we want to make small changes to it? I think the idea for moving human element, I don't think we will ever come up with some scoring system that we just endorse and go with it. But if we want to pursue that, I would be, happy to chase that windmill with all of you and see what we can do.
I'm sure at the end of the year, I'm gonna have a lot more to say. Maybe some ideas to change, so I just wanna go through it. From this side, that's
I
what
think
I
we
want
should
to
just go through this, because now look, you put it in from the outset. You guys did a pretty good job last year. It's refreshing.
And, I must have put myself in a position of defending what we did last year, though I have my complaints.
You have your what?
I have my complaints if need be, but overall,
Yeah.
I think that the system of ranking them, looking at the rankings, trying to find patterns, and then discussing priorities within certain bounds, I think it works pretty well, reasonably well, and I think it works better than any alternative that we would be likely to adopt.
Well, I think the staff cover sheet is very helpful.
Oh, yeah,
And
definitely.
I know we don't get that. Do we get that before the scores? Do you guys score?
We're going to, before the next meeting,
You are? Okay.
we'll give you our recommendations before the next meeting.
I think what this will look like when we walk in is that there will be a projection of staff scores and our scores, and we'll see them all next to each other and
That'd be
average, right? That's
Oh,
the,
yeah.
Yeah.
I did want to bring that up. Do we want to exchange, because I'll need the scores early, maybe a week before the next meeting. Is that possible? For people to send me their scores, and then we could try to get our staff scores sent out to you. Do you want to see that before you score, or do you want to see it just in the room side by side?
Might be helpful, I don't want to put any pressure on you, but it might be helpful to have it ahead of time, I'm thinking.
Okay.
is that especially for those of you in your first year, would it help to see staff scores first before you do the scoring?
So,
Okay. So our next meeting is the 21st. Maybe we could try to say we could get you our staff scores by the 7th, and then you could submit your scores maybe by the 14th.
Okay.
That'd give you a week to digest. Does that sound okay?
That sounds pretty reasonable. That gives you plenty of time to do any compiling you need to do.
Okay.
That was a question, I think. Shall we move to the Iowa City Council meeting updates?
That would have been Kyle.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I have Kyle written down as my person there. And I do not have an update. Do we have anyone who's volunteered for the next?
I think we only did one meeting.
Okay.
When are the next meetings?
Good question.
It's typically the first and third Tuesdays.
First and third.
So that's.
The
the
5th and the 19th.
Are we asking to go to the formal and the informal, or just the formal meeting?
It's up to you
I
guys.
guess it's a work session.
Yeah, so,
Sometimes the work sessions are more interesting.
yeah, I mean, it's an open-ended request, but if you do attend the work session and see something that we're
I will
not doing,
So you kind of want to report back on anything that might pertain to HCDC?
yeah, basically just anything of relevance to CDC, and I think as we originally did it, the report was At first, I think it was written in one paragraph, but the spoken equivalent to that, or if there's nothing relevant on the agenda, then it can be one sentence worth.
Okay. Give it a shot.
And so we're on to number 9, housing and community development information.
I don't have a ton to report this time. I did finally put a calendar together for HCDC, so sorry that is a couple months late here, but it just gives you an overview of the funding round we're going through, dates for that, and then the next funding round that will be upcoming. So it looks like in November we'll get you the next FY23 application materials. And then we probably need to talk about if we want to take winter and summer breaks at some point, but that's all I had. In my mind, anything on yours? No.
That was very helpful, I appreciate it.
Oh, good.
And it is pretty typical for us to take a couple meetings off per year.
Oh, really? We get a break?
Usually the December meeting is a few days before Christmas and people are traveling and stuff like that.
Staff like breaks too.
You do. You guys get a break from all my emails.
Do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.